So we're delighted that Steph Cibich has been working with Guildhouse this year as our inaugural Artworks 2020 Emerging Curator. And Steph has curated 2 exhibitions so far. The first one was Our Landscape in the Future, or Your Landscape in the Future?
Our Future in the Landscape.
Our Future in the Landscape. And this wonderful exhibition that's currently on You're Only Human After All, which is currently showing at the Adelaide Town Hall and features artists Maxwell Callaghan, Jasmine Ann Dixon, Tony Kearney, Anna Platten, Margaret Richards, Lee Walter and Raymond Zada. And it's fantastic to have 3 exhibiting artists, Jasmine Dixon, Lee Walter and Raymond Zada with us today. So Steph will start off with a discussion about the exhibition, and then Lee and Raymond will talk about their work. And this will be followed by Artworks Writer-in-Residence Susan Charlton in conversation with exhibiting artist and Artworks Artist-in-Residence Jasmine Dixon. So Susan's currently based at the City Library in town and is there 1 day a week on Thursday. So please pop in to see Susan if you're in Adelaide, and it's great to have her as our current writer-in-residence. So we're going to have some images during the session, but I'm going to hand it over to Steph now.
Great. Hi. Yes, I'm Steph Cibich and I'm the 2020 Artworks Emerging Curator. Thank you so much, Julianne. I just want to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we all live and work, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. So as part of my role as Artworks Emerging Curator, I had the pleasure to curate the exhibition You're Only Human After All, which, as Julianne said, is currently on display at the Adelaide Town Hall. It's there until October 23 and is delivered by Guildhouse in partnership with the City of Adelaide. So the exhibition was actually conceived when South Australia was under lockdown in response to COVID-19, and it draws on themes surrounding emotional expression, connectedness and human experience as expressed through art. So it features artworks by Artworks Artist-in-Residence Jasmine Ann Dixon. It also includes works by Maxwell Callaghan, Tony Kearney, Anna Platten, Margaret Richards, Lee Walter and Raymond Zada. You're Only Human After All harnesses the power of these multiple voices and offers creative insight into the authentic, relatable and sometimes uncomfortable truths about what it means to be a human being. It was a real pleasure to curate this exhibition and to work with such generous, talented artists. And soon we'll be lucky enough to hear from 2 of those exhibiting artists, but I thought I might just spend a couple minutes taking you all through the exhibition and speaking a little bit to the rest of the artworks that are on display. So in the first floor gallery, You're Only Human After All includes an incredible charcoal drawing by well-known artist Anna Platten titled What It Is, made in 2014. The work is massive. It's 95 by 133 centimetres, and it depicts a really important turning point in the career and life of the artist. It also reflects the exhibition's central themes by referencing emotional experiences and the sense that there is so much to life which we simply can't explain. From a curatorial point of view, it was really important to include an artwork by Anna Platten, as her work and practice left such an impression on our artist-in-residence, Jasmine Ann Dixon. And I'm sure Jasmine will be able to discuss this further. Jasmine attended a workshop run by Anna about a year or so ago, I think, which left her wanting to explore a more emotional atmosphere in her paintings and to progress her own artistic practice. I think including works by both of these artists offers an opportunity to view their own unique expressions of emotional experience and human connectedness. But it also invites a really interesting conversation about the importance of influential relationships and connections between artists, particularly established and emerging artists within our local arts community. The fact that we were able to make this link using artistic examples by the Artworks Artist-in-Residence and also to feature work by such a highly regarded local artist was really special, and I'm glad we got to do it. The exhibition also features 3 fantastic paintings by emerging artist Maxwell Callaghan. They were made between 2016 and 2018. So Maxwell graduated with a Bachelor of Visual Arts from the Adelaide School of Art in 2016. And since then, he's exhibited at a number of galleries in SA and also interstate, including M Contemporary in Sydney. And in 2019, he undertook a 12-month residency at Ace Open in Adelaide. Maxwell's practice is very personal, as he channels experiences and thoughts from his own memory. He uses the process of painting and writing to examine individual memory and his own internalized experience. Each one of these 3 paintings are so intricate and they're so different, and they offer so much depth. His work interconnects and juxtaposes formative and everyday memories, feelings and recollections, all ruminating upon their personal importance and also their social meaning. He talks about, he sort of works with subjects like self-talk, childhood and family memories, suburban social surroundings, experiences of mental illness, and he kind of condenses them into these contemplative, mosaic-like paintings. We were also really excited to include an artwork by Margaret Richards as part of You're Only Human After All. So Margaret, a Pippa-Ladara woman, born in the APY lands, moved to Adelaide around 2003. She's the daughter of APY artist Harry Chutchuna, who passed away in 2019, the same year that Margaret began painting at the APY Adelaide studio. This mesmerising painting is courtesy of the APY Gallery in Adelaide and represents the many chukula, meaning rock holes, throughout Margaret's country. Margaret says that she paints these because finding water in the desert was so important to Anangu in the old days. It was so special to be able to include this work, which I think in many ways functions as a central anchor point in the exhibition, partly because of its location within the room, but also because of its size, which is about 2.5 metres wide by approximately 2 metres high. It's perfect for those big grand ceilings in the first floor gallery in the Adelaide Town Hall. And its presence, just being so big and colourful, just really pulls you into it. There's also just, I think, when I look at this, there's so much detail. It's a mix of bold and pastel colour. It's got layers and layers of concentric circles, and it offers just something new every time you engage with it. Next to Margaret's work were 2 incredible photographic portraits by established artist Tony Kearney. Tony is an established analogue photographer with a passion for medium and large format film photography. He himself has curated a series of award-winning contemporary art exhibitions in Port Adelaide based around port-centric themes, and he describes himself as an amateur photographer and was recently selected as the feature photographer for this year's SALA Festival, which is set to be held in September around McLaren Vale, so keep an eye out for him there. These 2 prints on rag paper were made in 2017 and were taken from Tony's ongoing portrait series featuring Aboriginal artists and arts workers. The first one features a young artist named Jimmy Kenny Thede from Arab Arts in the Torres Strait. Jimmy works with ghost nets to fashion marine wildlife sculptures, and he also makes beautiful works with ceramics. The second portrait is of Wencha Morgan Napujari, an artist who was born in Malparinga and grew up in the Gibson Desert. Her work is featured in most state gallery collections as well as the National Gallery of Australia. I think these works offer so much in terms of human expression and connectedness. There is something familiar and relatable about the subjects, even though we may not know them personally. This could be an expression of Tony's relationship with his sitters, or perhaps more of a reflection on the nature of portraiture in general. But whatever the case, I think they both resonate with something really visceral and something which is utterly human, I guess. Opposite Tony's work on the first floor gallery are 2 dramatic portraits by Lee Walter. 2 dramatic photographs, I should say, by Lee Walter. So Lee is here to speak with us now, and I'll introduce her before she can speak about her work and her practice. Lee Walter is an emerging artist who works primarily in photography and also in installation. She's interested in both the human condition and ecological environments, and uses highly considered objects to construct her narratives and create a greater connection between the viewer, the work, and our own connection to these environments. So I'd like to welcome Lee. Hi Lee, thank you so much for joining us and for being a part of the exhibition as well.
No, thank you very much for having me. I wanted to thank you, Steph, for putting my work in this exhibition, as well as you, Julianne, for putting it all together. It's a really beautiful show, and it was really nice to see all the works. Again, I did go in and look at them all when it first got put in, and yeah, it was beautiful to see them all again. I think I want to talk first about the reasoning behind the works and the materials that I've used in these pieces. The pieces that have been selected for this exhibition are actually part of a bigger series called Imago, and the works are based on motherhood, the child-parent relationship, and the identity shift that begins to take place when you become a mother. A quote that really resonated with me on many levels when I was creating my work, and I kept on looking back on it, was by Osho, and I'll just read it out. It's, "The moment a child is born, the mother is also born. She never existed before. The woman existed, but the mother never. The mother is something absolutely new." For me, this was something that I had not realised I would experience, and how to navigate the idea of the old identity and this new identity that you're becoming when you become a mother, and how to have these two different identities exist within oneself and still retain that sense of self. Yeah, so the work Glorified Screw really focuses on the ideology and the pressure that can be felt when becoming a new mother, and how you have transitioning into being a new mother, and the idea of the good mother, the good parent, bottle-fed, breastfed, co-sleeping, controlled crying, and the list goes on. And if you do one, you're not a good mother, and if you do another one, you're not a good mother, and it doesn't really matter what you do, you kind of feel like you're failing. So here we have this bolt and these threads, and they're trying their best to work together to keep themselves up, and they're feeling completely ill-equipped to handle the situation that they're in, but they're making it work. They are keeping themselves up. And the good mother is about doing the best you can with the tools that you have, and knowing that this is enough. And it doesn't matter if you don't have everything, because what you have is enough. And it's when I first had my daughter, I was full of anxiety, not knowing if I would be able to do it. And, you know, she cries and you don't know what to do. But what I had were enough, the tools were enough. And Sorry What, so that's the other work that was in this exhibition. I'd already had this idea for this piece, and I actually came across a study in my research that really resonated with me, and conversations that I'd had with other women. So it's a study that revealed that the architecture of a woman's brain actually changes in the first years of pregnancies, and it can last for about 2 years. And it's the grey matter shrinks in a woman's brain that responds to social cues and processing social signals. And when I read this, I thought to myself, oh my God, there is a reason why I can't hold an adult conversation anymore. And when I spoke about this with other women, they also had this aha moment, like, yes, there is not something wrong with me. I have a reason for this. So here we have this poor bunny who's sitting there without a head, and she is completely lost, yet she's blossoming in other ways. She's becoming a mother, and she's using her brain for other things. So it's kind of supposed to be a little bit humorous. And I've used symbolism of the chrysanthemum that we associate with Mother's Day and motherhood, and the bunny, which is a sign of fertility, to create these works. And that goes into the style of the work. So I'm really influenced by the idea of the vanitas and the memento mori paintings. And I've liked to use this in my composition, from lighting, from the objects that I've used. I try to use symbolism within the works. Although with those styles of work, they are based more about the inevitability of death. I've tried to tip that and use that and create, or use it to represent life and the experience of motherhood in the works. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Lee.
Right, thank you.
So next we are joined by another featured artist, Raymond Zada. So Raymond is an Adelaide-based Aboriginal artist working primarily with photography, video and digital design. His heritage is Barkindji, Afghan and Scottish. Raymond's work investigates contemporary attitudes towards Aboriginal people and explores themes surrounding documentation, acknowledgement of Aboriginal history, hypocrisy, tokenism, racism and homophobia. Raymond's screen prints titled Captive Audience 1, 2 and 3 are on display in the Mankuriapi, the Reconciliation Room at the Adelaide Town Hall in the ground floor, which is just near the main entrance at the Adelaide Town Hall. This room is a unique space as it embraces the spirituality of the land and celebrates the rich and diverse talent of Aboriginal people in a harmonious expression of reconciliation. So, to speak more about this work and your practice, I would like to welcome Raymond. Thank you so much for being here and for taking part in the exhibition, Raymond.
Thanks, Steph, and thanks everyone for coming along. Excuse me. Yes, so I'll talk a little bit about the work that's in this exhibition and a few of my other earlier pieces as well. So my art practice is important to me because it's an opportunity. It gives me a voice. It's an opportunity for me to talk about difficult topics, or more importantly, to create a space for others to talk about those topics as well. A lot of my work deals with the treatments or attitudes towards Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Australia. So it's not always, there aren't always those opportunities to bring up those conversations. So having these works on the wall it creates a space for those conversations to start, and expressing those opinions through art is a really kind of non-confrontational way to do that as well. If I walked up to someone and said, "Here, read this brochure on racism," immediately people are going to be filtering everything they read in that particular brochure or whatever it was I handed to them. Whereas if I've got some artwork on a wall, people may initially see it as something humorous and engage with it, be relaxed, let down their guard, and then as they get closer or learn more about those works, they start to learn more about those ideas and the stories behind the works that I've created as well. So it creates a space for people to be more open-minded about the topics when they do get brought up as well. So I'm really lucky that 3 of my works have been acquired by the National Gallery of Australia. So I can feel, I guess, confident and feel that sense of achievement that what I have wanted to say is now part of our history as well. I can kind of rest easy. If they never get any other piece of work, at least there are 3 that are sitting there that are talking about topics that are important to me. So one of my pieces, I'm not sure how well this will work here. I'll just quickly show you on the main screen first some work that I've got on my iPad here. So I've just got to get it to adjust properly. So this is my first work that I ever exhibited. So this is from 2012. This is called Race Book, and it's actually made up, when you're getting close to that image, it's made up of racist comments that I copied from groups on Facebook. So when you see it from across the room, you automatically recognise the logo. There's a bit of humour in there. Race Book instead of Facebook. People approach it kind of smiling, thinking this looks fun. And then as you read the comments and they get darker and darker and more hateful, it changes the entire sense of that image that you've engaged with. But rather than it being this big sign on the wall that said, "Let's talk about racism in Australia," and on social media, it engages with people from a distance. And particularly with school kids, that's been the feedback from the National Gallery, is that's one of the popular pieces because they recognise that logo and then they walk up, and it's a great time then to talk about that level of racism, and yeah, it's just an opportunity for those things to get talked about. So another of my works is a video piece. So this one is called At Face Value. So this challenges people's notions of what an Aboriginal person looks like. So it's a series of 25 portraits. So I invited family and friends to come in and sit for some portraits. And it morphs through the faces because most people have a very narrow definition of what an Aboriginal person looks like. I enjoy a level of white privilege, in the sense that I get to walk down the street and people don't go, oh, there's an Aboriginal. I know what they're like. I know what their personality is like. So it's challenging people's notions of what an Aboriginal person looks like, because it is a form of racism and personal attack in itself, that if you identify to somebody as being Aboriginal and then their response is, no, you're not, or, there's a whole range of different responses that are equally kind of offensive and demeaning. So that particular work at face value was an opportunity to talk about those kinds of things as well. I had a few other different works in there, but we'll talk about actually a couple of prints really quickly. So I don't know if you can see my logo. It's a cicada. So I've been doing some print workshops at Cicada Press. They've been running Aboriginal print workshops for, I don't know how many years now, but I've been along 3 times. I primarily work in digital media, so photography and video and digital artworks. And this was an opportunity. So Tess Alice invited me along to work with master printmaker Michael Kempson at Cicada Press in Sydney. And it was a challenge for me, because I'd never done anything like that before, but Tess and Michael assured me that, come along, give it a try. It's a supportive environment, and it absolutely was. And so I set my hand to working there and doing some prints there. So the first work I created from there was setting a challenge for myself. So this is a work called A Little Sorry. So in 2013, I submitted the work into the Telstra Awards. So in 2012, I won the Works on Paper section. And then in 2013, my work, Sorry, won the New Media section. So so in 2014 is when I went to do the workshop at Cicada Press. So my challenge was to take this piece that was completely digital. It was a video piece with animated text, and I wanted to turn that into a print. And so that's how the Sorry piece came about. And it combines words. It combines bits of Paul Keating's Redfern speech. So in that speech, he says, we smashed the traditional way of life. We brought the diseases. We brought the alcohol. We committed the murders. We took the children from their mothers. We practiced discrimination and exclusion. So he acknowledged all of those things, but made no apology for any of it. And then in Kevin Rudd's national apology to the stolen generation, he acknowledged one of those things and said sorry for it, but nothing else. So the work that he did for Sorry was to combine those. So to have it saying, sorry, we smashed the traditional way of life. Sorry, we took the traditional land. So an apology for all of those things, and then having it finish with, sorry, nothing much has changed. Sorry is just a word. So it's my works are an opportunity to comment on what's happening in society today. And because the workshops were run in February, and it was always the anniversary of the national apology in February, I'd always be kind of being triggered as I'm walking into these workshops, and there's Kevin Rudd smiling, saying, hey, aren't we great? We've apologised, everything's good, and everything isn't good. So my first work was Sorry. In the following year, I produced Sorry Again and A Little Sorry. And then in the following year after that was another one, which was called Sorry, Not Sorry. So that's this little, it's a very white one. So that's this little triptych that takes a quote from the national apology. And it says, a future where this Parliament resolves that the injustices of the past must never, never happen again. And then shortly after that, that very same Parliament extended the Northern Territory intervention. So my works are an opportunity to talk about the things that are happening, and to highlight some of that, I guess, hypocrisy that goes on as well. So that'll bring us to the works in this exhibition then, Captive Audience. So I was sitting on the bus, and seemingly being the only Aboriginal person on the bus, we're all there. There was a little TV screen showing adverts, so we're all kind of captive. We can't not look at the ads. And so all of my previous prints that I've created have been very monochromatic, and I wanted to create something that had a bit of colour for a change. So that's where the idea for these works came in. I wanted to create something very, very light, very colourful. And as I was sitting on the bus, seemingly the only Aboriginal person on there, I was thinking about where we're underrepresented and overrepresented. So the first image in this series, the blue one, this is me sitting on the bus. The next image, the green one, is the proportion of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the general population in Australia. And then the third image is the proportion of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children in detention in the Northern Territory. And in this particular image, the white child in there is actually overrepresented by 3. So it should be a third of a white child in there to show the proper proportions of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children in detention compared with non-Indigenous children. So, and I think in June 2018, that proportion was actually 100% of Aboriginal children in youth detention in the Northern Territory. So again, it's an opportunity to talk about issues and to create something that's light looking and a little bit fun on the surface, but then we can have more of a conversation around those things. And just last week, someone said, oh, how appropriate that, you've got this work being exhibited and they're now talking about closing the gap 2020, where they're talking about reducing the rates of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in detention. And it was the same when I was talking about race book at the National Gallery. They said, oh, how appropriate that you're talking about racism, and the government's talking about changing the Racial Discrimination Act. I can pretty well exhibit anything anywhere. And it's always an ongoing conversation, I guess, around race relations and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Australia. And it's only when people are presented with the works that they're kind of, their radar can be switched on to those things and go, oh, they're talking about this issue, how appropriate that you're exhibiting now. But those conversations are always happening. So the most recent one is the Closing the Gap 2020. So a lot of the goals from the original Closing the Gap, or a lot of the targets, haven't been met. And so now it's been rebranded Closing the Gap 2020. And the one of the goals is talking about reducing the number of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in detention by 30% by 2031. So this is a goal for the government for the next 11 years. And the difference this time is they're working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations to try and achieve these targets rather than the government trying to do it all themselves. So at the moment, I'll show you this on the screen again. So the Human Rights Law Centre estimates that 65% of prisoners under the age of 14 are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. So the population of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders in Australia is 3%. So at the moment, Aboriginal kids are overrepresented by more than 20 times in detention. And so the target now for the government is to reduce that rate by 30% in 11 years' time. So the issue with that is in 11 years' time, if they manage to even meet that target, Aboriginal kids are going to be overrepresented by 15 times in youth detention. And so if the target gets reached, you know that the government's going to give themselves a big pat on the back. Look what we've done, we've reduced it by 30%. But what they won't talk about is Aboriginal kids are still overrepresented 15 times. And that assumes they even get to that goal in 11 years' time. So the issue with closing the gap this time around is those targets get set, but there's no real accountability if those targets don't get met. The government doesn't get defunded, programs don't get defunded. It's just, oh, well, we'll try again. We'll set targets for another 11 years' time and we'll see how it goes. And so for people who are seeing that perhaps from the outside or through a white lens would see it as, oh, here's the government putting more money towards Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders to fix up their problems. Whereas from our point of view, we see the hypocrisy, and we see that this is just kind of history repeating itself. It's often a lot of just talk rather than action and rather than real results. And just to wrap up on the particular piece that's in the exhibition, so just talking about that kind of duality of the views as well. So when you're looking at this piece, some people will look at it, and when I don't tell them what it's about, they'll say, oh, this is about immigration in Australia, and they identify with the white person in the red image because they assume that it's that we're being overrun by immigrants, whereas I can absolutely assure you that if you're a person of colour or an immigrant or a refugee and you're walking down the mall in Adelaide or sitting in your classroom at school or sitting on the bus or the train, that you would absolutely identify with that individual in the blue image surrounded by the white population. So it's interesting to see how people walk up to an image and what they see in that image immediately. And it's great to be able to stand with them or sit with them and talk about, no, this is actually what's behind the image. And then hopefully they're able to then, I guess, get a better understanding and talk to more people about that as well. Thanks for your time today.
That was great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Raymond. It was great to get that level of insight in your practice and your work, and very well articulated. It was really great to hear from you. So now I will pass it back over to Julianne, and thank you all for, I guess, listening to us talk so far. And next we'll be hearing from Susan and Jasmine Ann Dixon.
Thanks so much, Steph, and thank you to Raymond and Lee for those fantastic insights into your work. This talk was originally planned as a live event as part of SALA, and we still are in the SALA program. But when the new restrictions came in for recently, we had to sort of scramble online. But I must say it's fantastic to still be able to hear from these amazing artists and sort of see people up quite close and personal on your video, and thanks to everyone who's here today as well. And the Artworks program presented by Guildhouse and City of Adelaide is a fantastic way to sort of experience South Australian artists. And just a reminder that the exhibition, You're Only Human After All, is on till 23rd of October, and you can actually go in and physically see the exhibition at Adelaide Town Hall Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So please, if you haven't seen the exhibition, Steph has done an amazing job with a really impressive group of artists, and it's a great exhibition to see, and hopefully you'll be all encouraged to see that after the talk today. But also another aspect of the Artworks program is a writer in residence and an artist in residence. So we've been really lucky to have Jasmine Dixon in residence at the Art Pod in Perry Street. And unfortunately, Jasmine was quite impacted by COVID. She started her residency in February, but then the whole of City of Adelaide offices and the Art Pod was closed during the COVID shutdown. But Jasmine did manage to get in for the last sort of couple of months, I think since May, and continue her residency. And also we have a fabulous writer in residence, Susan Charlton, who's been in residence at the City of Adelaide City Library from June. So Jasmine and Susan have been having quite a lot of conversations, and Susan has written recently on Jasmine, and that will be available on the Guildhouse website soon. But we thought this is a great chance for Susan and Jasmine to have a chat. And Jasmine has work in the exhibition, as Steph's discussed, and just to talk a bit further about the residency experience. So I'm going to hand it over to Susan just to do a bit of an intro.
Thanks, Julianne. I want to acknowledge that I'm on Kaurna country. We might be online in Zoom, but I'm on Kaurna country, and I want to pay my respects to the Kaurna people and acknowledge their community and culture. Jasmine, so we met when we began to re-emerge from lockdown, and I came to the Art Pod to meet you for the first time. We hadn't met before, and we hadn't really talked. And that was such an interesting kind of dance between us, because you were there sitting side saddle on your chair at your easel. And I came in, and I was quite distant from you, sitting across from you with my laptop on my knee, sitting in a window seat. And we started to talk. I started to ask you questions, because I wasn't there just to get to know you as a fellow Artworks residence person, but because I knew I was going to be writing about you and your work. And the interesting thing that happened, and it does happen elsewhere, but it seemed really noticeable this time, was one of the ways we got to know each other is we began to see that there were points of connection, and we started to show each other things on our phones. So you showed me photographs of flowers. You were doing a still life at the time. And I showed you some scenes from an online series called Centerpiece, where a florist speaks to other Black artists that he really admires, and then he does a magnificent floral creation in response. And then I'd been playing around with the books at the City Library, and they seemed to be jumping off the shelves at me, and I was putting them in installations and photographing them. And you showed me someone from Instagram who was doing something similar. So we gradually started to get to points of connection and started to talk. And you told me about how important art had always been for you, and in particular painting, right from when you were a young child. So do you want to tell us more about that, like what art has meant to you, and in particular painting?
First of all, hello everyone. I'm Jasmine Dixon, or Jasmine Ann Dixon. Forget my own name. So yeah, painting. Yeah, drawing and painting has always been hugely important in my life. When I was younger, I really struggled with schoolwork and still do struggle with anything written because I'm quite dyslexic. And so art became just a way of communicating and interpreting the world, I suppose. It made me feel a little more level with other people as well, that I kind of had something that I excelled at. So that's how I came to rely on art in such a strong way. And I never had any doubts when I was in school that I would be an artist. But yeah, so the second I left school, went straight to art school, and yeah, it's just kept going from there, I guess.
So, but when you applied to be the artist in residence, there was a sense that you weren't sure whether you still wanted to be an artist. And I'm just wondering what kind of happened, what shifted that made you feel that way?
Yeah, so when I went through art school, I again still had a very strong sense that I was going to come out of this as an artist. I think I had a pretty kind of naive view of what being an artist would mean. And after about, I graduated, and then after a few years, I did have quite a bit of success exhibiting in galleries and getting into competitions and everything. But art had become this thing that I needed to prove myself in. It was my identity. It was everything to me. And I felt kind of like if it was removed from my life, that I would probably stop existing as well. And it just became so overwhelming, the pressure to create and to be accepted into things, that I knew I kind of needed to take a break, to step away from it, because I didn't ever want to have to rely on something to define me so much. And it was really killing the passion for me. So I took some time away from it, and kind of, I don't know, it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. I didn't feel like I could do it again for some reason. I don't know. I developed sort of, I guess, an unhealthy relationship with my art. So when it was a couple of years, I think I stopped painting for about 1.5 years, and I went and did some other study just to diversify my skills. And I did decide that it was something that I wanted to come back at and give another go. And when I read about the Guildhouse Artist in Residence program, I thought, oh, it's been long enough. I need to get back in the ring. So I applied, and totally didn't expect to be accepted, but was, and it was really good. It was extremely intimidating, not for any reason, but I put a lot of pressure on myself. So I was nervous about being watched while I paint. I was nervous about not creating the right things. And there I am. And there's a lot of, even just in this talk, to be honest, hearing the other two artists speak, you guys are amazing, and I get like I get very overwhelmed by all of that. So I have a lot of imposter syndrome, but it was surprising how this residency built me up. At first it was nerve-wracking to be so watched, it's like 50% windows, and people are walking past all the time, but lots of people started popping in and saying that they really love my work. Some of them were like, "This is my favorite one yet," and I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." You're welcome. I'm just doing my thing, but I'm glad you feel that way. So, and I had some people come in and they're like, "I want to learn how to paint, can you tell me?" And I was like, "Oh, I mean, I can try." So I had so many people coming in and just really, really interested. So it was really it really built up my confidence in a way to like see such happy people coming past and just taking an interest, and thinking what I did was impressive. So nice. Yeah.
So I know one of the great things for you was that you were in the same show as Anna Platten, and I think it was in September last year you did a workshop with her, and she had been on your mind. You'd had this great experience of seeing the retrospective of her work at the art gallery, and that was a bit of a turning point for you about a direction that you might be able to go with your painting. Do you want to talk about going to that exhibition? I think it was in 2014, and what you love so much about the work, and then how excited you were to be able to do a workshop with Anna, and what came out of that for you?
Yeah, so I think the retrospective exhibition was in 2012, and I really connected with her. Sorry, my dog's being annoying. Seeing the artwork in that exhibition was really important to me, because it wasn't just I don't know how to explain it. I just walked in and I thought, oh, this is what I want to be. These threads connect for me, because the artwork was like portraiture and a lot of like women and like staged in theatre. And I'd at the time as well been kind of doing makeup for some amateur theatres and doing their sets and everything like that. So I kind of had a little bit of interest in the theatrical. And I went in, and she'd made all her costumes. And again, I had like I'd been raised with family who sewed, and I had made a lot of my own clothing over the time. And just seeing all these things, how she'd used all of these aspects to create these really fantastical feminine, powerful artworks, and that really, really hit me as important, because that's kind of just what I wanted to be. I just wanted to create artwork that felt so authentically me, which I feel like the artwork, when I look at it, just seems so authentically her, unapologetically, you know, emotional and impactful. And that's all I ever want to be. And I just, yeah, it was just so feminine. I don't know how to describe it. It's not feminine like it pinks and like what I do, where it's all like pinks and stuff like that. But it was just, I don't know. It felt like a raw interpretation of being a woman, and that's pretty cool. I mean, at the time I was 18, 19, and I loved it. And she was South Australian, and she had like an entire floor of just her artwork, and that's dope. If I could ever do that, just have like, you know, be represented in my own state, and that I just, you know, I just want to, you know, I don't know how to explain it. It's just overwhelming, and I got really excited by it. So, yeah, that exhibition was really important to me, and I knew that if I ever had an opportunity to meet or to hear from her or to learn from her, I would take it. And over the years I did see some artist talks from her, and I sort of briefly spoken to her, but never enough. I really wanted to just sit her down and be like, talk to me. And yeah, it was like, yeah, last year I had a friend who worked at Adelaide Central, and so she heard about the workshop before anyone else and let me know, and she was like, it's going to come out on this day, you need to apply. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I will. So I applied for it, and it was only 3 days long, but it was just everything I wanted. It was she's so generous and so wonderful, and yeah, just she's kept in touch, and it's been very inspiring, and it helped me to reconnect with, you know, my teenage self of what I wanted to be as an artist. And and like, again, in the past, I have had connections with amazing artists as well. There's so many like South Australian artists that I absolutely adore. A lot of male artists as well. Like I was mentored for a little bit by Robin Earley, who is a photorealistic painter. Again, an amazing person and super, super generous. But I do think that I really kind of was missing out on a bit of a feminine perspective, something that was a little more emotional. Robin, again, the loveliest dude, tackles things with a bit of a male perspective. Not in a bad way, but just kind of a little bit business oriented, which is totally fine. I learned so much from that because I had no idea what I was doing business wise. But yeah, just later in life, I needed someone to help me know what I wanted to make and who I wanted to be as an artist. So yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
Are we just about run out of time, Julianne?
Yeah, I think we just want to make sure we've got enough time for a couple of questions. But actually, I might just, Lee has a question for Jasmine. We've got a question for Jasmine and a question for Raymond. So if anyone has any more questions, please do type them in. But thanks for that, you know, fantastic insight into your work, Jasmine, and for excellent questions, Susan. But Lee just wanted to know, Jasmine, how has your relationship changed with your art since coming back to it?
I am trying to not make artwork for anyone but for myself. Serving what I need comes first, and if I am not making art that doesn't feel good to make, then I don't think I should do it, which I think again, from a business perspective, isn't I wouldn't, if you're doing a business, you don't really just want to do it when you just want to. You got to kind of keep producing to keep that business running. But I think I've realized that doesn't work for me, and I don't like, that's when I start to get really stressed out by the artwork. So making sure that it's always sort of important, and maybe not being as precious about how I create it. I'm trying to be a bit looser and trying to explore colors in different ways. And I'm just, I guess, just following what feels exciting. And hoping that that kind of leads me in the right direction, rather than thinking about what people want, because I do a lot of that. I do a lot of like what speaks to the people at the moment. I need to speak a bit from me.
Great, thanks, Jasmine. And we have a question for Raymond from Melanie. So Melanie is asking Raymond, Melanie says, thanks so much for your talk and the chance to see your work. But are you drawn to do a work about the recent loss of the rock art in Western Australia? Terrible travesty.
Firstly, hey Melanie, I recognise the name, and now I can see your face. Hi. Not drawn at the moment, but a lot of my stuff tends to like I'll take it in, and it'll kind of like the race book, for example. That came from racist comments on Facebook. I copied and pasted all of those into a Word document because I knew I wanted to do something with them that was more than just reporting it, because those pages disappear and then come straight back up again within 24 hours. So for Racebook, that kind of sat on the hard drive of my computer for, I think, 3 months. And then one day I was just like, I know what I want to do with that now. So a lot of things I don't kind of, because I'm not doing art full time, I don't sit down and go, oh, I'll do something on that right now. Often you've got to schedule it around your programming work that you're doing, or community work that you might be doing. But yeah, a lot of those things I do tend to take in and let brew. And other times, like I haven't been on social media for, I think, 15 months now, because it can just be this bombardment of people with these posts around all of these horrendous things that are happening to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and you can't just take it in all the time. So I'll pop my head up every now and again, see what's around, see what I respond to, and then something comes from that.
Great, thanks Raymond. Another question for Jasmine from MFA, Director of Guildhouse. Thanks for being here, Emma, and other Guildhouse staff. So you just spoke, Jasmine, about the emotional connection to your work. How do emotions play out in your work?
So I guess when I do an artwork, I don't want to think about, oh, this is an angry artwork, I'm going to make it angry. I just, when I approach it, I like to think about the subject, what I feel like that subject is kind of calling for. If you want something a little more, I guess I don't want anyone to kind of go up to the artwork and necessarily feel like they're being told, oh, you have to feel this way looking at this artwork. I want it to, reflect a little bit of what the subject's feeling and reflect a little bit of what I'm feeling. So I use a lot of color. I'm using a lot of underpainting. So using an underpainting that is is an analogous, yeah, color, similar to the main color of the painting. I'll use that underneath. So for example, I did a painting where I did it like green underneath, and then I painted the actual painting as kind of blue over the top, and the areas where you let a little bit of that green show through, I think evokes different feelings. It just kind of looks a little more, I said this somewhere else, that I said that it makes it feel magical, but I think that's just my lack of not knowing what word to say. But it does, it feels something about it, just it feels a little mysterious when you have colours interacting in that sort of way, and that's what I love about when you overlap colours and let bits peer through. So otherworldly, yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Jasmine. We've only got a couple of minutes, but Steph has a question for Lee. Your works incorporate such thought out installations. How long does it take you to consider and put these installations together?
Thanks, Steph. It takes a long time. That I tend to not really work with a journal. Everything is in my head, and I'll be thinking about something for months, and then I'll try to collect all the bits, and then to actually create the work and put it together takes, you know, a few hours. And like, you know, everything has to be in that right spot. So I did have a work that was in the hospital, and it was a feather, and around it was like this piece of metal, like a slinky, I suppose you'd say. And I think it took me 45 minutes just to get the feather in the right spot that I wanted to then be able to photograph. So yeah, so from months to, you know, hours actually creating it. And then the lighting, I use light painting to create all of these works. So I go in and I put the light in with a little torch. Yeah, and then, yeah, that's it.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks. Steph, is there anything you wanted to say before we finish up today?
No, other than another big thank you for everyone to joining us, and thanks for the artists and writer in residence and everyone for being on board, and thanks for everyone's questions, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks very much to Steph. It's a pleasure having you at Guildhouse as our emerging curator, and Steph will have one last exhibition that will start at the end of October at Adelaide Town Hall. So thank you again to all of our artists. Thank you to Raymond and to Lee and Jasmine and to Susan for your questions. And as I said, Susan is in a City Library on Thursday, sort of 10 till about 1, I think. And and you love to have a visitor, don't you?
I love a visitor. Yeah.
So thanks again to all of you for being here today, and we hope you've enjoyed this SALA in Conversation session for Artworks 2020, and the video will be available on the Guildhouse website at some point soon. So thanks again to the artists, to our writer in residence Susan, and to Steph especially. Little clap. Okay, so
Thanks, Julianne.
have a great day, everyone. Thanks very much.